Hey everybody, good evening. I'll let folks get a second to jump on, but I just wanted to provide what will be a very quick recap of our day at the Texas State Capitol here in Austin, Texas, and a little bit about what we're going to try to do tomorrow, and ask you to join us in this if you can, especially if you're in the Austin area, or if you're not too far from Austin, if you're in San Antonio or San Marcos or Central Texas, or from our perspective in El Paso, which is an 8.5 hour drive, if you are in Dallas or East Texas or even the Valley. I think Austin to Brownsville to Austin, maybe 5 hours, 5.5 hours. If you can, start thinking about this now, and then maybe you can make a commitment to do this by the end of this live stream. Think about coming to the Capitol tomorrow to testify against one of the biggest attacks on voting and voting rights and civil rights for that matter, and democracy in Texas in at least the last decade. So I'll come to that at the end. We'll start with the end, but now I'll take you through what we saw today. So as many of you may know, many of us from all over the state traveled to our state capitol today. I got here last night and then got up bright and early and was at the Capitol by 7 a.m. this morning to testify against House Bill 6. What is House Bill 6, you ask? It's an elections bill that fundamentally changes how we conduct our elections, and it's not for the better. For example, if you are disabled and you need a home health care attendant or a friend or an aide or a family member to help you fill out and send in a ballot, that person now may need to essentially provide some kind of voter ID, even though they are not the voter. And even though they're helping somebody who otherwise is not capable of filling out that ballot themselves, they will have to go through the voter ID process, which is going to, in a number of cases, as you can imagine, dissuade people from doing this, from voting, from participating and being involved in our democracy, in our political process. So I've reached out to ADAPT here in Austin. I've reached out to others who are strong advocates within the disability community. There's great concern with this. Furthermore, it strips power from local elections administrators, so the county clerks and the local officials who run elections, who in the case of Harris County have brought innovations forward like 24-hour voting for shift workers who work 2 or 3 jobs and may get off work at 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. And with 24-hour voting, now they can vote. If they were constricted, as this bill would do, to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. voting, it would be a little bit harder and frankly maybe impossible in many instances to cast a ballot. That's gone going forward. You have severe limits on absentee voting, mail-in voting, and early voting. And then there's this. The whole criminal code is changed to set up these extraordinarily punitive felonies for even the most technical violations of election law. And if you had any doubt about who this is intended to target, let me give you the facts. So the best predictor of future performance is past performance. Here's how Texas has performed in the recent past. Ken Paxton, our twice indicted attorney general here in Texas, has set up an election integrity task force. What the hell does that mean? It means that they are spending a significant amount of taxpayer resources and taxpayer-funded positions within his office to pursue even the merest hint of voter fraud. 72% of their investigations and convictions have come against Black and Mexican American or Latino voters in Texas. 72%, even though African Americans and Latinos comprise combined 44% of the state. So 72% of the cases in this population, though the population only comprises 44% of Texas. Can that be an accident? It's like, I think, the way that 100 years ago we'd be talking about a poll tax. Well, the poll tax applies to everyone. What are you so worried about, Beto? Well, it's interesting that it's only enforced against African Americans in Texas. Or a literacy test. Shouldn't people be able to read before they vote? Maybe that's hard to argue with, unless the literacy tests are only applied to African American voters in Texas. There are a number of, in the sordid and long history of voter suppression and voter intimidation in Texas, a number of examples like this, where on its face, it may seem relatively innocuous. In practice, in implementation, and in effect, it's devastating to our democracy, and especially to communities of color, or in this case, communities of color and the disability community here in Texas. What this is going to do is take a state that is already 46th in voter turnout, and not for any lack of love of democracy, but because we are designed to fail in this way. A state that is ranked 50th in ease of voting by the Election Law Journal. A state that has been ranked as the most suppressed, voter suppressed state in the country. A state that, in other words, is really struggling with democracy already. It's going to put us in even worse straits going forward. That's why I and many others have driven hundreds of miles to come to the Capitol to testify against this stuff. So we show up this morning. That's my big wind up too. We show up this morning, we go to the committee hearing. We respectfully listen to the chairman and members of the committee, Republicans and Democrats, talk through the bill. The hundreds of us who have arrived at in some instances, great cost and great distance, and some level of sacrifice to our families and our jobs and our schools and our other responsibilities. Just as we're about ready to testify, they close the hearing and they cancel the public testimony. And it kind of makes you wonder why. I mean, this is their job, to run these meetings, to facilitate these debates and discussions on the bills that are being proposed that might ultimately become law and affect every single one of us in our lives. In this case, when it comes to voting and participating in elections, why the hell couldn't they get this one right? Why was there an effort or an accident, perhaps in quotes, that left every single one of those hundreds of Texans who'd come to their capital, to their government, to participate in this decision that would affect all of us? Why were we all left out in the cold? I don't know, but it might have something to do with some of the surprise that the Republican chairman felt when he saw all of these people coming from all over Texas to talk about, shed light on, and hold accountable for this mess of voter suppression legislation. These members of this committee, and maybe the fear of daylight and transparency and this becoming more publicly known is what stopped them from going forward with the hearing. I don't know, but it's a good thing, because in the Texas legislature, uniquely in the legislatures of this country, it only meets once every 2 years. And when it meets, it only meets for 140 days. Time is the enemy of any proposal. And so for this bill to have to be withdrawn today, and for them to have to restart the process again, which could take days, I don't know, maybe weeks, they're running up against a hard and fixed deadline. And if they miss it, that means that this voter suppression effort is dead. That's why I'm asking you to consider joining me tomorrow, where I'm going to show up again, this time on the Senate side of the House, to try to stop a similar, in fact, an even worse set of voter suppression laws that are going to be debated and proposed in the Texas Senate. Same rules apply. You show up, really at any point, but the earlier the better. I think maybe doors open at 8, más o menos. Look this stuff up yourself. Don't trust me. It's late. I've been going at this all day. But you show up at the state capitol. You're going to get a quick COVID test, maybe a temperature check. Wear your mask. And Amy, my wife, will remind me to wear 2 masks, because that's the best guidance from the CDC. You go in at a kiosk, you sign up, you put your name, and then you're given, I think, 2 minutes to speak from the heart and say, hey, I want to make sure that all of my fellow Texans who are eligible to vote are actually able to register and vote. That's it. I don't care about Republicans. I don't care about Democrats. I don't care about independents. I don't care about a given policy or politics or any of that stuff. I just care about the fact that, 245 years into this great experiment, this democracy for which men and women have given their lives on the battlefield, have given their lives in the crusade for civil rights, have sacrificed so much. I just want to make sure that we preserve this thing and that it works for everyone. I mean, that might be something that I might say. You say it in your own words. But maybe, just maybe, if all of us show up again tomorrow, the way that all of us showed up today, we can stop this a second time. Now on the Senate side of the House, the way that we did it on the House side today. So who knows? Democrats are in a pretty significant minority. Every single statewide elected office is controlled by a Republican. You might think that the deck is too stacked for us to succeed, but we succeeded today. There's a very real possibility we could succeed tomorrow, but it's not just going to happen on its own. And if this is the single greatest civil rights, voting rights fight of our time, and at least in the last decade, that's true, then is this one where you want to be on the sidelines? Is this one you want to read about the next day? Is this one where you're going to say, shit, I wish I had shown up and lent my voice and done what I could to stop this, because they were able to stop it on Thursday in the House, and if I'd shown up on Friday in the Senate, maybe we could have gotten it done. Don't wish that you had done that. Make a decision now that you're going to come out. And listen, can it be intimidating? Yes, I'm intimidated. And I've served in the El Paso City Council. I've been a member of Congress. I've heard testimony from others. But getting ready to testify today, I'd be lying to you if I told you I wasn't a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous. But that's okay. It just reminds you that you're alive. And if there's anything that you want to be alive for, it is preserving the right to vote and hopefully expanding that right to vote going forward in the future. Let me give a few shout outs to the people who made this possible today in Texas. The ranking member, meaning the highest ranking Democrat on this elections committee today in the House, Jessica Gonzalez, she was the one who sent the call out to which we all responded. Literally, I heard from her last Saturday and she said, hey, there's a really bad bill coming down the pike. I know it's a long drive from El Paso, 8.5 hours. Would you consider making it? And would you consider lending your voice to this effort? I checked with Amy. I thought about it, and talked to the team at Powered by People. And we said, you know what? This is why we are organized in the first place, is to make sure that people have the right to vote and can exercise that free of obstacles. So let's get out there. And if we mean this, we mean this. Let's go take the drive to Austin and let's step up and let's testify. So Jessica Gonzalez, thank you for your leadership today. Absolutely wonderful. John Busey, one of the newer members of the committee from Central Texas, he was just magnificent in his questioning of the chairman and not intending to, I think, just asking him very straightforward questions about literally what was in the bill. The chairman, I think, grew a little flustered, had a hard time answering this, had a hard time coming forward with even one example of voter fraud. And Busey mentioned to me that the incidence of voter fraud in Texas, it's 0.00004%. That's 5 zeros and then a 4 after the decimal point. You are more likely to be struck by lightning in Texas than to encounter voter fraud in the state. He had to, the chairman had to admit there really isn't any voter fraud. And then he did this crazy circular logic that's related to the big lie. He said, well, maybe there's no voter fraud, but if you look at current polling in America, voters are concerned that there might be voter fraud. Well, I wonder why. Maybe it's because people like you put bills like this forward. Maybe it's people like you go to Pennsylvania and challenge the lawfully, democratically, legitimately decided election for president and seek to overturn it, and so doubt and mistrust in the minds of your fellow Americans. Maybe you have something to do with it. Maybe you are akin to the arsonist who sets the fire and then wants to be rewarded for showing up with the hose at the end of the day. I think that's what's going on here. So John Busey, Jessica Gonzalez, Art Fierro, Michelle Beckley, the whole minority representation on that committee was just phenomenal. And then when the chairman ended the session prematurely without allowing for public comment, that same committee organized outside in a little plaza in the center of the Capitol and just took testimony from those of us who had shown up. And so everyone who made the trip out there, we had a chance to listen to your testimony, and some of that we were able to broadcast on Facebook Live earlier, just like we're doing now. Thank you. You all were just absolutely amazing. A couple of shout outs that I want to read out. First of all, I know you can't be with us tomorrow because I think you live too far away and you're not a resident of Texas, but Gigi in Nebraska, thank you. Jay asked if we're going the way of Georgia. Yes, this is an unfortunate echo of what you saw take place in Georgia with the governor signing their voter suppression bill into law, and a state legislator who was trying to get into the room, literally a black woman trying to get into a room of all white men signing that bill, was dragged off by Capitol Police in Georgia. That's the kind of thing that you're seeing right now in Texas. And look, it's not unconnected. There are more than 250 bills like the one that I just described throughout 43 different state legislatures right now, including in Georgia and obviously in Texas. Amy is upset about what happened today. Martin is worried about what happened in Georgia. You should be. And if you're really concerned, Georgia is behind us now. It just got signed into law. Texas is not. Texas is not. You still have an opportunity to stop this in Texas. It's not too late, but it's not going to stop of its own accord, right? It's got an inertia that is propelled by this big lie propagated by these Republican members here in Texas. We have to step up and stand in the way of that, or it will become law here as well. Abdullah is on. Deborah is a co-director of an organization that works with people with disabilities. They're fighting against SB 7-2. Thank you, Deborah. Lauren says that she's got our back. Thank you, Lauren. Likewise. Dahlia says it's not the first time that they've left us out in the cold, and she's right. Sherry from Waco is on. Sherry, I want you to know that you had some representation from Waco today. Mary Duty from Waco came out and testified as a Texas citizen, trying to make sure that we stop this. And she informed us of this. And Sherry, you may or may not know this, but she said that Waco is among the top 10 most voter suppressed cities in the United States of America. And so because Waco's ground zero for this, Mary felt like she had to drive to the Capitol, and she said this is the first time in 30 years that she's made this drive, but this is so important that she had to do it. Claudette says, why don't they want us to vote? And Claudette, that's the question of the hour. It makes you wonder, why would they be trying so hard to keep people from voting? It might be because that vote is so important and can bring about such significant change. I told you earlier, just the virtue of making sure that we preserve this democracy is sufficient for me. But if you care about stopping climate change before it's too late, if you care about rewriting our immigration laws, if you care about true fundamental criminal justice reform, if you care about anything that is important to you and your family, the only way you're going to get it done is if we have free and fair elections in this country. And Texas are among the least free and fair in America today. That's why we're working on this, to make sure that we stop the bad stuff and then work together to improve our democracy, to bring more people in. Rachel says that she's going to try to drive down from Dallas. Thank you, Rachel. If you do, please let me know. I'd love to see you and thank you in person while I'm there tomorrow as well. And I'm looking forward, I hope, to testifying right alongside you. Seema, and I think this is our friend Seema Lajavardian in Houston, Texas, who is going to try to come out today, who may try to come join us tomorrow. Seema, thank you for all of your work in Houston and Harris County. As you probably know, Harris County is the target for a lot of these voter suppression efforts. You all pioneered the way in 24-hour voting. You pioneered the way in curbside and drive-through voting, in voter supercenters, in having a ballot tracking application so that when you mail that ballot in, you can be assured when it's been received and counted. All of that could potentially be scrapped if these bills pass. And it's because they fear you in Houston. They fear you in Harris County. So you, Houston and Harris County, need to show up and defend yourselves tomorrow in the Senate when they hear Senate Bill 7. Folks ask, what time should you get to the Capitol tomorrow? 9 a.m. is what I'm hearing from Kate. You can get there later. You can get there 10, 11, 12. You can still sign up. But I think the earlier you get there, the earlier you're likely to be able to testify. Marco says, I'll see you all tomorrow in the morning. He's going to testify. Thank you, Marco. And Kate's also mentioning the earlier you get there, the better, because there's a little tent that you have to pass through before you enter the Capitol where they're going to test you for COVID. So you get a free COVID test out of the deal. But here's the thing, guys. By reaching out to you on live stream a couple days ago, actually just yesterday, by tweeting this and posting on Facebook, we were able, along with a number of other amazing partners like the Texas Civil Rights Project and MOVE and Texas Organizing Project and the Texas Democratic Party, we were able to see more than 200 people come down to the Capitol to testify. Does that sound like a lot? Does that sound like a little? I'll tell you from listening to the legislators, that's a lot to come out for an elections bill. So let's see if we can't get a similar turnout tomorrow for Senate Bill 7. Get there as early as you can in the morning, speak from the heart, and know that your very presence could potentially stop this voter suppression bill. That's exactly what happened today in the House here in Texas. So we have a little bit of good news to ride for a little while, but it only lasts for the day. We've got to start again tomorrow. Mom's Demand, I'm learning, is sitting in committee right now against permitless carry. To all our Mom's Demand friends who are out there who are staying up late into the night to testify and to make sure that they do what's right, not just for themselves and their families, but for all 30 million of us in Texas. Thank you for what you're doing. I saw you in the Capitol today. Made me very, very proud of the work that you're doing, and we're grateful. Kim Canseco says hi. Kim, you'll be very happy to know that we saw somebody from Del Rio who driven all the way in to testify today. So all parts of the state are represented here. At least they were today. Let's see if we can repeat it tomorrow. So I'm going to wrap up now, but I just wanted to give you kind of the skinny on what happened today at the Capitol, what you have a chance to participate in tomorrow, and most importantly, to thank everyone who was involved, the Democratic members of the committee who did such an exceptional job in stopping this really bad voter suppression bill, and all the members of the public who took the time to drive in, show up, and stand up against something that would really hurt this state, and a lot of people who are very vulnerable, who don't need an extra burden when it comes to voting. So you all are my heroes. I'm looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible tomorrow. We'll check in again at the end of the day to give you an update on what we saw and what transpired. So keep up the fight and be well. Adios.